Yeah, by and large, well, it's important to remember though, there's a big difference. There's business groups and there's the actual businesses themselves. So by and large, the business groups have all welcomed it. It's important to note those business groups have been really key in this deal. You talk to any of them off the record, what they tell you is 2 years ago with the original protocol deal, they felt that they weren't heeded. Their input wasn't taken seriously or asked for at all. And then we had the protocol deal, which we've had for the last 2 years. This time it's been different. All of them say, actually, there's been much more engagement. Speaking to one earlier, praising Steve Baker, the Northern Irish minister, saying we had talks with him. He wasn't just listening, he was looking for questions. He was coming back. A lot of that input has made its way into this deal. They've also had a lot of praise for Rishi Sunak. That's the business groups. Then you have the actual businesses themselves. And when we think of businesses, don't think of Tesco's and Marks and Spencer's, people with thousands of employees who can swallow any costs. Think of small, medium-sized businesses, the cornerstone of most economies, mum and dad outfits. You know, you throw extra red tape at them, you throw lots of new paperwork at them. That means that all of a sudden it might be a person they need to employ that they haven't got the money for. The margins are really small. For them, there's cautious optimism. They want to hope that this is a good deal, but they have been marched up this hill before. So for them, they are hopeful. There are good signs on the horizon, but it is hard to overestimate just how tough the last 2 years have been for them. The journey has been longer, the waters rougher than many had ever believed.
The draft legal text that the Commission has published, if implemented, would undermine the UK common market and threatens the constitutional integrity of the UK by creating a customs and regulatory border down the Irish Sea. No UK Prime Minister could ever agree to it.
If you think about it, you know, the free trade agreement that we will have to come to with the European Union should be one of the easiest in human history.
But a deal now signed in Windsor could have profound effects for the people and businesses of Northern Ireland. In Ballynahinch, a deal means the difference between actually stocking shelves with shrubs and an excess of expense.
We were able to buy these last week. They've come from the Republic of Ireland, so they're getting the roses in from England. And then we're having to buy them off them. These come from a great company in Nottingham.
Right.
But the only way we can get those is if we hire a 40-foot lorry and ourselves and 2 other garden centres go together. So seed potatoes is another problem. We just can't get them out of England.
Spuds, you can't get spuds.
Well, yeah, spuds. We can't get spuds.
A protocol deal here means not just the hope that suppliers with years of history may return to doing business, but reaffirming Northern Ireland's place in the Union. How many decades have you been bringing spuds over for?
Maybe 30 years, maybe something like that. But I mean,
and after 30 years you can't?
Yeah, but things, you know, there's been trade between the mainland and here for centuries, and there's never been a problem. So all of a sudden now we're not allowed to do this. So that means we're being treated different. We're being treated different as my fellow citizens in Scotland, England or Wales. We're just different now.
How's that feel?
It doesn't feel good. I should be allowed to buy stuff from my own country.
That difference in how Northern Ireland is dealt with compared to any other corner of the United Kingdom has led to stalemate and paralysis in Stormont. The Democratic Unionist Party walked away from power sharing because of the protocol. Today they said they would carefully work through the deal and assess it. The sole traditional Unionist voice member of the Assembly, though, needed considerably less time.
I think that the Prime Minister did oversell it. I think the spin was palpable. And the real decision lies in what the text says.
Nationalist Sinn Féin welcomed the deal and called for the DUP to end their boycott of Stormont.
All political parties need to be sitting around the executive table taking decisions that impact on people's lives. That's where we should be today. There shouldn't be any delays in that. Vincent, we have a health service in crisis. We have public sector workers out on the picket line. Where we need to be is making politics work and standing up for the people.
Come on then, let's have a look. In County Down, a new protocol deal means keeping afloat. Michael ploughed his life savings into this pet food franchise 6 years ago. To cross the Irish Sea, these goods now need to be signed off by a vet, and he's drowning in paperwork. He relies on a significant amount of help from the parent company. And if they hadn't done that, what would be the effects on you on this?
The pension fund that I invested in buying this business would have gone down the tubes. We would have ceased to exist.
You'd have lost everything?
Yes.
So how much of an impact then is a deal going to be for you? What are the next couple of years going to look like for you?
It would be such a relief. We would get our lives back where we can have a work-life balance, which we don't at the moment. A lot of self-employed people, we spend more hours than the average 9-to-5 worker, yes. But the last 2 years with Brexit, the paperwork that we have to go through, it's absolutely horrendous.
Over the last 2 years, for many firms, crossing these waters has been perilous. Tonight, not for all maybe, but cautiously at least, there is hope on the horizon.
Well, in a moment, I'll be speaking to Ireland's Minister for European Affairs. But first, I'm joined by Stuart Anderson, the Head of Public Affairs at Northern Ireland's Chamber of Commerce. Stuart Anderson, what do you make of this deal today?
Jackie, there's an awful lot in this deal that we have been asking for some time, and to be honest, we're pleasantly surprised by a lot of the good that we're seeing, certainly in face value and what we're seeing in the documents as they start to come through. It's going to take time to understand that and see the detail, but certainly we've always been saying that there needs to be a special case made for the Northern Ireland consumer while protecting the position of our exporters, and broadly speaking, we seem to be in that ballpark. So look, we are content with where we are right now.
I mean, as everyone is saying, the detail is going to be very important, but on face value, practically speaking, what does this mean for businesses? What problems will it solve?
Yeah, I think the key thing is 2 out of every 3 goods that move between GB and Northern Ireland are for the Northern Ireland consumer, they're retail or wholesale. So what we're going to see now is goods that are available in Birmingham on the shelves of the supermarkets will be available here in Northern Ireland. Those plants that are available in garden centres in GB will be available here in Northern Ireland. That's huge progress that we've been looking for and huge progress that we've been asking for. But for every single business, we're now going to see the removal of this significant customs burden, particularly for SMEs. 9 out of every 10 businesses here are small or medium-sized businesses, so they don't have the economies of scale to deal with some of the issues that present themselves.
And how difficult were those checks that had to be done under the old protocol, if it does indeed become the old protocol?
It largely depended on the nature of a supply chain, the various commodities that businesses were moving. Certainly for those businesses that were smaller in scale and those that were moving mixed loads, as it were, so particularly within retail, it was particularly challenging. For some of our manufacturers it was less so, and they were actually seeing the benefits of the protocol in terms of the dual market access that it was delivering.
So what would you say has been the sort of general pattern over the last couple of years in terms of whether it's been damaging or not?
I think the difficulty is that we've had the grace periods in place, and so it's very difficult to get a sense of what would the full implementation of the protocol actually look like. And I think sometimes even as consumers we've probably become accustomed to life and not understanding what full implementation would have looked like. So we're now going to see parcels being able to move from GB to Northern Ireland without customs declarations, and that's something that was potentially going to come but for the grace periods. So that's really, really significant.
So if it is all as good as it's looking on face value for you, for your businesses, what do you predict for the next couple of years for Northern Ireland?
Well, I think this is going to be the test now. I mean, certainly we've seen a huge amount of effort made by the UK government and by the EU and also by the US and others to encourage a deal and to see a deal secured that works for both businesses and consumers in Northern Ireland. So really we need to unlock what our potential is now in terms of growth. If you think about the last 2 years, our exports have actually been up. Our sales to GB have been up. Now is the time to really, really grow on that with some strategic and political buy-in.
And obviously business is really important, but the politics too. As a citizen, for businesses, how important is it that the institutions get up and running again?
It's important that we have government at all times, and particularly in these challenging times with the cost of living pressures, the pressure on our health service. But look, we've been clear as a business community, this is not just a trade issue, this is a political issue, and we've been pleased to see the level of engagement that our politicians have enjoyed. We will now turn to engage with our politicians, but from a business perspective, we've just got to work through this detail at this point.
So on the face of it, good news.
We think so.
Stuart Anderson, thanks very much for
Thank you.
talking to us today. Well, let's get the view of the Irish government now. Joining me from the Republic of Ireland is Peter Burke, who's the Minister of State for European Affairs and Defence. Mr Burke, could this deal have been done earlier?
Well, obviously, we've gone through a number of months now negotiating on a very confidential basis with Maroš Sefcovic on behalf of the EU and also with the British government. And I do think what happened about 4 weeks ago was really instrumental to the genesis of that deal. And that was the deal that was hammered out on data sharing. Because what that did for the EU 27 is that it gave more robust flexibility because they could get a snapshot looking through the IT systems of what the profile of goods was coming in through Northern Ireland. And when you have more robust safeguards, you can have more flexibility. And I think that significantly paved the way to where we are today.
I think you might have heard there, a representative for businesses across Northern Ireland saying on the face of it, it's very good news here. But from the Republic of Ireland perspective, the integrity of the EU market, there will be fewer checks. Are you worried at all about security?
No, I think it's very fair once we have that renewed trust that has been built up over the last number of weeks and indeed months under the new administration has been very important to getting to this point, because we're now at a stage where, as I said, the EU can really see in terms of what the profile of goods are. I think we have a reasonable agreement here that will absolutely protect the interests of Northern Ireland. And that's obviously very important for our government, that we get the institutions back up and running, because obviously the citizens of Northern Ireland have voted for the administration, and it's really critical that it gets back up and running and delivers for the people of Northern Ireland. But overall, I think the mechanisms that are in place here will protect the EU single market, because it mitigates the risk in terms of so much goods that are either for end use or consumption in Northern Ireland, and a specific and different approach to goods who will be coming into the EU single market. And I think that's fair, and it gives everyone a level playing field, hopefully, which is very important to us, that it is significant enough to get the Northern Ireland institutions back up and running again.
Absolutely. That is, of course, one of the key issues. And exactly on that point, the politics is very, very important. We had Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill today talking with finality. This is the done deal, no other show in town. The DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, say there's been significant progress, but they still have key concern. They talk about standing ready to engage to seek further clarification or reworking or change. Is change up for grabs at this stage, do you think?
I'm sure further clarification will be provided. I think that's important. To be fair, it will be a very significant document, so I can absolutely understand any political parties, right to go through it in fine detail. But I do believe it should be the pathway to get our institutions back up and running, because it is, in essence, providing stability. Like you've heard with Stuart there from the Chamber of Commerce, how much and how important it is to have stability for business community in Northern Ireland, and as well for the citizens of Northern Ireland. So we have come a long way over the last number of weeks and months, and hopefully it will be enough in terms of to bring everyone to the table, because, as I said, it is so important, even with some of the clauses that are contained within this agreement, like the Stormont Break clause, requires the Assembly to be up and sitting in order to invoke them. So I think it's critical that we have the pathway now, and I know our Taoiseach and Taoiseach have invested a lot of time over the last number of weeks in meeting with the leaders of the 5 political parties in the North to ensure that trust is again being rebuilt, and hopefully that will provide a pathway to get the devolved administration back up and running.
And that issue of trust that you talk about clearly tied to new personalities in terms of a new Prime Minister.
Well, I think it's very important, that we have really a very solid mechanism now right on the table. It's been done with renewed relationships. Even on the EU side, we have Maroš Sefcovic, the Vice President of the Commission, taking on this portfolio, invoking the article of the Withdrawal Agreement 164 to try and find joint solutions to the issues in relation to the protocol, because we all accept that there are always going to be unforeseen circumstances in terms of how the protocol operates. But coming to the table together, we can solve those issues. And I believe this agreement has solved those issues, but also into the future. And one thing I'm very keen on is, our relationship post-Brexit. Our country, the Republic of Ireland, the North and Great Britain, we have so much in common, so many shared values, and we really need to start building on that post-Brexit relationship and take and grasp the opportunities that are presented for all our countries.
Peter Burke, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.